Liz Chisholm. That's a last name I've been very familiar with over the last 20 years or so because of David and the gang. And you and I've crossed paths a few times. Welcome to the fight. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm living the dream. Living the dream. So I want to kick off here real quick. So guys, real quick, Liz is going to be doing a workshop at Mile High Profit Summit in September on systems, which is the I have to tell you, it's one of those words that when I hear a contractor say, "I just need systems," this is just me. It's just me. My blood pressure goes up, and it's probably because I'm not wired as a systems person. You know, I'm more of a visionary, but it ticks me off mainly because most of the contractors that come to the fight and say that they don't get mad at me, Liz. All right, this is my take. All right. I'm willing to be wrong. I was wrong that one other time in my life. And, but I immediately go, yeah. You need systems, but what you need before that is you need to sell, and you need to sell at a profit. And my philosophy has always been, just because of my wiring, is yes, I know I need to create systems. So I focus hard on selling at the right rate. So I have profit left over to hire somebody like you to do the systems shit. And I know we all have systems, you know, even those that go, I need systems. Well, you have a system. If you're writing a prospect's name down on a scrap of wood in your truck that you found on the job site when they called your phone, and you took some notes and you threw it in your dashboard, that's your current CRM, you know? So it's a system. I get that, but it bothers me because I think so many contractors put systems, they make it a huge priority, or they want to, before they're ready to. I don't know if that makes sense. And you're probably going to shoot down my argument on every front here, which I'm totally cool for. I'm fine with. I've just seen it hundreds of times where guys will put all this effort into things that they suck at and they don't use. And then in the process, they've taken their foot off the sales pedal, and they don't prospect. They don't reach out to their past customers. They don't answer their phone quickly. Which, yes, you could say these are all systems. I get it. I totally get it, because I can tell. I can just see the look on your face. You're like, dude. But I just see this. That's why my blood boils a little, or my blood pressure goes up, because all right, help me with this. So you're going to coach me now. Help me with this, because maybe it's just their fanatical approach.
What if I asked you?
Yeah, here we go.
Instead of doing systems, what if I asked you if you'd like more clarity in your business?
There you go. Now you're speaking my language. There you go.
Because people who don't have systems actually don't have clarity. And when they don't have clarity, what happens is they just do whatever happens next, and they kind of bounce through their business like a ball in a pinball machine. And it's like, oh, well, this fire came up, I got to go put this out. And, oh, this thing came up, I got to go do this. Oh, we ran out of materials on this job site, I got to run to whatever supply stores local to go pick this up. And you end up becoming chief errand boy, wearing all the hats, doing all the things. And you're like, if I just had a system in place. And the problem is you don't need actually a system. In fact, you don't even need SOPs in your business. What you need is clarity. What is it you're doing? Where are you now? And what's blocking you from getting to where you want to go?
So this lack of clarity, I just figured out why I hate systems, or I hate this conversation. Not this conversation with you, but in general. It's because in the past, whenever I try to implement a system or an SOP or something, I find myself spiraling down the drain, where I'm now thinking of every possible situation that could ever happen. So then the creating of that system that I put on paper, or however we communicate it, doesn't account for every single scenario, if that makes sense. And so I feel that I get bogged down and I get paralyzed by, oh my God, this is way more intimidating and than I thought it was going to be. So how do you help somebody like me? I guess that would be a good start here.
So there's a couple of different facets to that. Number one is most SOPs, when people write them. So SOPs are standard operating procedures.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time people want them on their shelf and they think it's like a trophy. Like, look, I've got all of my SOPs written down, and it does nothing for your business.
Right.
In fact, I've actually talked to contractors who have spent $30,000 on companies to write down everything that they do, and they have never opened up the book and never used the systems, because just writing down that is not what we need to do. Maybe that's part of the steps, but that's not what we need to do. The second part to this, though, is accountability. A lot of times we want to hold our employees accountable. And so when you hold somebody accountable, you're actually the one being the action. And so you're the one actually needing to follow up with them, to micromanage them, to make sure they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do it right? Whatever. And that is actually not what accountability means. Accountability means communicating what somebody is responsible for or what you are responsible for. And so when you actually flip the tables and talk about accountability as being accountable, and you create a culture of accountability where your employees are being accountable, you don't actually have to have every scenario written down, because there's that trust built. And so again, you can, have very clear, specific outcomes that you want, and then bring in your employees, bring in your teams, whether they're subs that you work with a lot, whether there's employees, whether they're independent contractors, but you bring them on as, how do we get from here to there? And then we create that system together, and you don't need to go down the rabbit hole of 1,000 different options of, well, the what ifs. A tsunami hits and X, Y, and Z happens, and all of a sudden we're just spiraling ourselves out of control, and we're not actually making it clear on what that outcome is.
You touched on the word outcome a few times there, and it's way back in the day. We had this. We would coach our crew leaders that this is the outcome we're after. We'd start with the end in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's basically what you're saying, is everyone has to be clear on what the end looks like, what a successful project completion or experience looks like, whatever you want to call it, and then bring your team in and go, okay, how do we get there? How do we reverse engineer that? So you're saying don't put it all on your shoulders to figure it out and do all the thinking.
Yeah, but a lot of times that's too big of a bite to take. Okay. So even saying like, what would it look like if we were successful this week? Mm-hmm. Here's where we need to get on this benchmark. What could we do on a daily basis to get there? Or even on a daily basis, we need to paint X amount of square feet of wall space. We need to get to this point in construction. We need to have everything ready because we need to call in permits. Like whatever that benchmark is, and then what needs to happen is the first question. But the more powerful question is, what do we not do today in order to reach our results? Because a lot of times we just add and add and add and do more and do more and do more. And we end up not doing what we actually need to do because we find the easy way to go through life. If you think about a river, it always picks the easiest, least resistant way to go, not the way that actually is going to get to the results. And so a lot of times it's like, no, we're not going to do this. No, we don't do that today. Maybe we push it off tomorrow because we have to get this done, as this is the priority.
Where do you start when you take on a client? Like, what's the first thing you do with them?
So the first thing that I do with them is really understand their business and where it is. And then from there, I understand where all their systems are. So there's actually 4 types of systems. There's the one that you already know. Your business is good. If your business is operating, you're not bankrupt, and you've got money in the bank, you've got some systems that are working. Mm-hmm. The second one are the systems that are broken, and you know that they're broken. The third one is the systems that are all stuck in your head. And then the fourth one is the dumpster fire that you don't even know exists because there's no clarity in anything. Mm-hmm. And so I have them go through analysis of where each area of their business is in terms of these. And so if it's all in their head, it means that we need to get it down to their head. And that's kind of a long discussion, and we can hit that a
Yeah.
little bit more, because that's actually a lot of the systems that we do, or how we do things. It's all in our head, and it prevents us from hiring somebody, or it prevents us from being able to delegate. But anyways, the second one is where we know something's a problem, we know something's not working, and we need a new system. And so what people do is they take the system that's broken and they try to write it down, and they try to shove it down their employees' throats, a broken system that's just going to make more brokenness in their business. And so we have to separate everything and understand, what is it that's working that's just in our head and that we need to get out and grow, or what is it that needs to be replaced. And so one of the things that I'll be teaching in my workshop is how to get systems out of your head. You can apply that to getting systems out of your key operations manager's head, getting systems out of your project manager's head, and therefore you're building all the systems and SOPs in your business, because people are doing their job. And then once it's out, you're like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Oh, we're repeating tasks here. And then the rest of the conference, I'm guessing, based off of the speakers that I've seen, are going to be finding new systems and replacing something that doesn't work in your business with a new way, a new strategy, new tactics, new follow-up sequences, new, whatever it is, that you're not currently doing. And then you're probably going to get to the end of the conference and realize, I didn't realize that I don't even have this thing in my business. And now I got to go figure this out. And so your systems fall into any one of those categories. And you'll waste time if you try to just write everything down. If it's in, I call it my systems quadrant. So if it's in quadrant 2 and you go and write everything down, you're just writing stuff that doesn't work down. And if you try to verbally communicate everything in system 3, normally, and they've done studies on this, when you think you've delegated correctly and you think that you've communicated, you've actually only given somebody about 2 to 3% of the information they actually need. And so that's why I always do things question-based, because I can actually use questions to pull information out and make it 80 to 90%. And so you don't have to think about, okay, what am I not saying? What do I need to do? And then you get into the weeds and whatever. So I take all that guesswork out of there. And then the quadrant 4 is where you're going to have to just be curious and stay on top of your business. And quadrant 4 is all of a sudden going to move to quadrant 3, and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing this. Or it's going to move into quadrant 2 and be like, yeah, that's not working. We have to replace that system. And so when you understand what areas need what help, you can actually really pinpoint it and say, oh, we just need to answer these questions, and now it's all outside of our head. We can go delegate that, hire that person, we're done. Or, wow, we don't even have a CRM, and no wonder the 2x4, scrap that's in the seat next to us with names on it is not working. Let's actually put in a software program that's a CRM. But what people do is they put the software program to try to fix what's in their head, and they bounce between 5 different software programs in a year, and they're like, there's no good software programs out there. There's nothing out there that's going to work for my business. But we're not actually managing it via strategy. We're managing it via tactics, and tactics will never get you to your end goal.
So is there a hierarchy of systems? Meaning, so if you read one of Mike Michalowicz's books, we did a workshop with him a year and a half ago or whatever it was down in Florida. And he's got like the hierarchy, like, there's Maslow's needs, where you need food,
yeah, it's
water,
the Fix This Next book.
Yeah. And he talked about like the first thing you got to have is sales, right? Then you got to have profit. Then you have to have order, and that sort of thing. Do you approach helping somebody with systems like in a certain order of systems by priority? How do you identify where to put your focus? Because I imagine you can't tweak, work on, implement, and hold accountable that many things at one time, right? Which is also probably why guys like me get paralyzed. We try to work on so many things. In fact, right before this interview today, I had about 10 minutes to kill it. I'm like, all right, I'm going to brain dump some stuff. And then there's the curse of the entrepreneur, right? Well, I have to do this too. And I have to do this. And I have all these things. Well, let me just pull this up and check. And we start getting distracted. And then literally I wasted the 10 minutes. So how do you ensure you're not wasting time doing things in the wrong order? How do you identify that?
So I'm all about minimalism. I
Mm-hmm.
used to be the business owner that worked 100-hour weeks. I have been there, done that. My husband and I used to own a craft brewery in San Diego. And I realized that the more I worked and the longer I worked, the less efficient I was.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I started eliminating things off my plate that I could give more focus to something that actually needed attention. So if you're doing 100 things and you go and focus on sales, which I love his hierarchy thing,
Mm-hmm.
but you end up just adding sales stuff to your already long to-do list. And then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, you're now more overwhelmed. And then when you don't get that next sale, even though you've worked hard at getting more sales, all of a sudden you get discouraged. And then you're like, well, I don't know what's going to work because you're already adding things to an already long to-do list. So I always take stuff off before I put stuff on. I always, what systems are not working, what's not getting us to our results, and stop that. What clients do we
Mm-hmm.
need to fire? What jobs do we need to like button up and be done? Or figure out a way to charge more on it? Like, where do we need to free up our energy? So there's a lot of resources that you can recapture. And most people are maxed out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if they're working 80 hours a week, adding more stuff to their list is not going to do any good. In fact, all it is going to lead to burnout. And so if you think about your business as like a bucket, and we want a fuller bucket, we want a very, very full bucket. We want a bucket that's overflowing. And you can
Mm-hmm.
have it overflowing with time freedom. You can have it overflowing with profits. You can name whatever you want that thing to be overflowing. And the thing that we try to do is go turn on the faucet more and try to fill up the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
But the bucket may have holes in it. There may be kinks in the hose. The connection where the hose is plugged into the faucet may not be screwed on tight. It may be like crooked. And so we always think like, well, let's just crank it on even more. You know, let's add more ad spend. Let's do
Mm-hmm.
more things. And it just doesn't work. And so I think that there's like a preset thing that
Yeah.
needs to happen before you get to sales of what's not working. And if it is a sales issue, is it because we have enough leads but are not converting leads? Is it because we're converting leads, but then we're not getting the repeat business and the referrals because we're just dumpster firing it throughout the job and just treating our clients horribly? Or are we, not, is our sales process so long because we have zero marketing out there? Like,
Yeah.
what is the thing that needs fixing? And then fix that first. So you obviously need to start with sales, because if you don't have money in your business, you're kind of screwed. But it doesn't actually need to be a let's go put more ads out there, or let's go, sell more stuff.
Yeah.
It's, well, maybe we can sell at a higher price, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
we're, working with all these people that are nickel and diming us. Shift. Maybe we're working in neighborhoods that have one bathroom. Why don't we go work in neighborhoods that have two or three, and you've got repeat business for the next little bit? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you start realizing, okay, what kinks are in my business and what do I need to fix? It makes it a lot more tangible, a lot easier to fix it. And so a lot of times we always want more business, more sales, more,
Yeah.
oh, we're going to go add all these things. And it doesn't work. It just leads to burnout.
Well, I'm chuckling here as you're talking, because to somebody who's wired to be a salesperson like yours truly here, the solution for everything is sell more. That's like saying a hammer is the tool you use for everything on a job site. It's and this is also why I have an amazing team. Like, if you talk like disc profiles and stuff, like I'm a high DI. My CEO, my personal assistant, our programs manager, like everyone in our core fight team is actually a high C on a disc profile to balance me out because I'm a problem. And so, um, I'm just blessed to have great people that, do a phenomenal job at creating these systems and, and making things happen. So I'm not poo-pooing that in any way. Um, I think you also touched on something a little while ago. You talked about, people at Mile High, they're going to leave and they're going to go oh, there's going to be new stuff, right? And the new stuff is always exciting. It's shiny, it's new. And I think when you're hopping from thing to thing to thing, you're going to have problems and never get anything done, which the thread that you've been running through this whole thing that you've been talking about here today is clarity. I mean, that's why you ask the questions that you ask. Like I had a coaching client, or I have a coaching client who he's like, dude, I don't know what's going on. I'm selling all my jobs at 50, 55% gross profit, but we're completing them in the 30s. Right. And so that means, okay, you don't have a leads and sales problem. You have an operations problem. Right. And so that's where your focus needs to go. That's the clarity that you need to have. I mean, you probably know all the stats and stuff, but like the amount of, or the lack of attention that the average contractor or business owner for that matter gives to their current or past clients is staggering. Like it's like, hey, thanks for the job. And then we move on, we look for the next, and we don't market to the people that are right under our nose. And then our ad spend is through the roof, and we're not getting a big bang for our marketing buck when all we needed to do was put in some sort of a process to just stay on the radar of the people that already love us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but a lot of that is not even thinking that you need to think about that. So I really like the book called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
Great
and
book.
He's all about thinking. He even quotes the Think and Grow Rich book of like, you got to think first and then you can grow rich. And so last week, I have several of my clients who are working on hiring another project manager, and either they've never had one, or they have one and they're no bueno, or they've left. So I've kind of got quite a few people that are working on that. And I presented 2 weeks ago 10 questions based off of knowing where they are in their business, tailored to them, 10 questions on what you'd want your project manager to do, the outcomes you wanted them to achieve, how they were going to make your business money, because you never want to hire somebody who's just doing busy work all the time, and different things like that. So we did that. One guy took that, made an SOP with it, and hired a project manager like within a week, which was awesome. Then the next week I was like, okay, so your project manager is more than likely going to have run-ins with your client, whether you have a client, success person, or you have some type of liaison. Your project manager is going to be part of that journey for your client. So let's take this project manager job and let's flip it to the customer, whether that's commercial or residential, their perspective. And so I came up with 10 questions based off of knowing their business, what they thought. And some of the questions I asked were, when you finish this job, will it be what your client thinks is success? And most of them never thought about that. And I said, if you don't know what that is, what would you say is successful for your client? And sometimes it's not the price, it's not the finished job, it's not anything. It's picking up the nails that have fallen in the snow in a couple months. Like, hey, we're going to follow up with you in a couple months when it's not wintertime anymore, like my siding guy. And we're going to make sure that once the snow's melted, we don't have any nails that are left behind. It's that assurance there. But they'd never even thought about that as a system. And so sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. And they were realizing that every time they went that extra step with their client, they got repeat business from them. And it's not that big of a deal, but it was something that they did automatically in their head sometimes, and it needed to come out. And it was like, oh, wow, that's exactly what we need to do. Okay. And then we need to build it into like a, ending checklist of wrapping up the job. Other customers may want a very clean job site, like my spray foam guy. He comes in, and if he's in a residential house, he's got boots and covering the floor and everything, because sometimes they'll, spray foam their attic to make it cooler and, monitor the temperature better. But all those attentions to details are what makes their clients happy. But if you don't realize you're doing that, then you start cutting all those details as you grow. And then you start not actually getting the repeat business as you grow. And then you're just shooting yourself in the foot as you're doing more sales. And so understanding what are all these little details that you do. Another guy, he gets, you know, before I was working with him, he was like a 90% estimate close rate, and now he's at 100%. Like if he writes an estimate, he's doing the job 100% of the time,
Mm-hmm.
zero questions asked, like he does the estimate. I'm like, okay, well, if you want to go hire an estimator, what are you doing that's doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I just do it. It's like, okay, we got
Yeah.
to figure out all those little tiny things that add up. And if you were to sit down with a piece of paper and try to write them out, you'd be lost. But if
Yeah.
I were to ask you 10 questions, you'd be like, oh, yeah, this is exactly how I do it. And so that's why I've switched everything to questions, because when you're clear about it, when you're clear what the client wants, when you're clear what that outcome should be, when you're clear what makes that client come back to you again and again and again and tell all their neighbors, now business is easy.
Mm. As you were talking about that, it reminded me of the saying, I don't know where I heard it, but if you want to go faster, you got to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're doing with your clients. That's what you're
Mm-hmm.
asking us to do by asking these questions. It's just sitting down and just going, because there's a lot of us out there, that we feel if I'm not moving, I'm not growing, and sometimes you got to be still. You got to get, what's going on between your ears, and you got to answer those questions. Um, I think it was before we hit record, you said that you've got people from 500,000 people up to 8 million that you're working with, that, the owners are working 80 hours a week. And when you brought up The Road Less Stupid, which is a great book, you guys, I recommend you get it. One of the questions I got from that book, Keith in the book talks about how he has his thinking time every week. And where he sits in the same place, same time every week, and he just writes something at the top of the page that he's going to think on, right? And one of the questions that I stole from him years ago that I ask myself frequently, and I asked it again today on our team meeting, just to myself, and I made a note of myself to talk to my CEO about it. But every Monday morning we sit down, we track all these metrics and all of our KPIs as a company, and I'm just looking at it, and the question was like, do these even matter? Does the tracking of all this shit get us closer to where we want to get? And that reminded me of the question that Keith asked in the book. He says, where am I busy where it matters the least?
Yep.
I think that's one of the best questions you can ask yourself. And whenever I've had those periods where I've taken a pause, taken a half a day, and just said, I'm just going to chill. I'm just going to marinate on this. It's really crazy. Some of the things you come up with, like, I give example after example, I don't want to waste time on, but when you're working with a company and, you have clarity around where we need to put our focus and the processes, systems you're going to put in place, where do you see most companies struggle when it's time to get their team on board?
Most of them struggle because they don't have the right team. In fact, almost every single one of my clients I've ever worked with for the past 5+ years,
Mm-hmm.
at least one, if not three, are getting laid off or the employee quits
Mm.
when they roll out something.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time warning my clients that, because they think that their staff is the bomb and
Mm-hmm.
everything's great. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's great. If you roll this out and you're like, hey, we're going to operate our business differently because we're stuck at, $1 million, and
Yeah.
our net profit at the end of the year is 3%, and that's not unacceptable. So we've got
Right.
to do something different because what we're doing now is not working. You guys all on board? And they're like, yeah, we're on board. And then as soon as we start asking the questions of them, you're putting your business under a microscope, and it's very difficult. It's like going to the gym. You rip your muscles apart so they can heal stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And if your employees are not up for it, they will quit. In fact, almost every single one. Like, I've got one commercial contractor right now, and I think he's up to 4 fires
Mm.
since we started working. He's like, I feel like I'm going backwards, but I feel so much freer and my profits are going up. I'm like, that's fine. You're good. You're still in business. Your profits are good. they're going up and your staff is gone, and now you're hiring more strategically. You're hiring people for the next step. And you may have people on your team that have gotten you to where you are now, and they may not be the people who are going to get you to where you want to go.
Right.
And so you need to be okay with giving them the invitation to join you, or giving them the opportunity that they may not be the right fit for your next stage in life or next stage in business. And so if you have the right team in place, they will be more than thrilled to do systems. If you have the wrong team in place, they will think that you are judging them. They will think that they're not doing their job right, and they will fight you tooth and nail for anything you try to implement. And so it's kind of that litmus test of, if I roll this out and it works, great. And if I roll this out and it doesn't, I need to start thinking about my team and who is going to get me to that next level and who needs to take another road.
Are there certain personality types or profiles that seem to be better for somebody if they're hiring in their company that buy in? And the reason I ask is my first painting company, we did these disc profiles on our whole team. And at the time we had 4 crew leaders, and 3 of our 4 crew leaders were high S's on the disc. And, and the other guy was a high D. And he was super money motivated, which is why he implemented everything. So his motivators were different, but like the high S is typically more likely from my perspective to like get on board because they like security, they like safety, they like knowing what's going on. So obviously you can't go out and hire just all one type of personality. I mean, you could if you wanted, but it'd probably be a little difficult to fill your bench. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So I like the disc profile. I'm actually a high D with a flex I.
Wait, hold on. You just threw a wrench into this whole, damn it. You took all my excuses away for sucking at systems. All right. So you and I are a high DI and you're the systems girl.
No, I'm a high D.
Yeah.
Low I, but my I flexes, so I can turn it on high or I can turn it off.
Yeah.
So I can go either way. And then my S and C are almost right next to each other, except S is flex and C is not.
Okay. Gotcha.
But I am off the charts D, like off the freaking charts D. But I submit to you that the better, more easy method to follow is what Patrick Lencioni lined out in his 6 types of working genius.
Okay.
When you understand the different types of geniuses and how people operate, it's much easier to fit that within your organization because everything is linear. So you have your wonderment, you have your invention. Usually those are the visionaries, the business owners. They come up with 1,000 ideas and they think they're all great.
Yeah.
And then you have your D, which is discernment. And those are the people that shoot down all the great ideas. And you think that they're the Debbie Downer, but they're actually just thinking through all the different scenarios.
Right.
And then you have the G, which is a galvanizer. So I'm a hardcore galvanizer like nobody's business. Your operations manager should be a galvanizer. They're the ones who motivate the people, get everything organized, and make sure things get done. Those are the types of people that you want as your project managers, as you want, operations managers, those types of things. And if you have somebody that's in a different genius and you try to promote them into becoming a galvanizer, but that's their frustration, you're going to come into all sorts of problems. And then after galvanizer, you have enablement, and they're your workhorses. They are happy to just show up to the job. They don't want to think about business. They just want to do it and be done. And then you have your tenacious people who want the finish line crossed. They want to get that job done. So they're great for doing your punch list, for closing out with your client, for getting that check, for making those numbers show up on that spreadsheet, for getting things done. And so when you look at things that way, you can understand where it is. So like my husband and I don't have any E in us. E is a frustration. That's enablement. And so we're working currently right now to hire somebody who is an E that's the workhorse, not somebody who wants to do the management, not somebody who wants to, organize everything and rally everyone up. We're looking for somebody who can just do the work. And so when you
Mm.
think about things in that zone, which sometimes for people it's a little bit easier than DISC because you can actually see what they're doing. It's a great book if you haven't read it.
Well, you just gave
It's
me a new book to read, so this is awesome. So I haven't read that one. I've read most books, or a lot of books, and
and you
and
know Patrick Lencioni,
yeah,
so
oh, totally, yeah. No, that's awesome. I got to pick that one up. Um, yeah, it reminds me we had a guy named Adrian. His name was Jose. These guys were awesome. Jose was a phenomenal crew leader. He's got his own business now. It's great. Happy for him. We promoted his brother Adrian said he wanted to be a crew leader. Or actually, we went to him and said, "Would you like to be a crew leader?" and and he was agreeable. And 2 months later, he walked in the office. He says, "I need to be a painter." He's like, I can't handle this. I just want to do my thing." He
mhm.
was that workhorse. He just wanted, and he was a worker. He was an absolute production beast. But ask him to manage people, do the paperwork, do pre-job walkthroughs, any of that stuff with clients, close out a job. He wanted no part of it. He was miserable for those 2 months. And so we moved him back down to, the painter position, and he was happy.
Yep.
So um, I love it. So you you are now I don't hang out with you every day or anything like that, right? We don't talk that much. It's been a few years actually. Um, there is a confidence about you that I want to point out. And I think you know where I'm going here, because over the last few months, you've been up to something, and you have this swagger about you today that I'm loving. Um, and what and you also said that during these last couple months when you were doing this thing, your business grew. So what was the thing?
So I am on currently today is day 75 of 75 hard.
Nice. Awesome. That's
It is
cool.
not for the faint of heart. I
Yep.
will tell you that 75 hard is easy. I did a whole post on it
Mm-hmm.
because if you start adding things and changing how you run your business, eventually you look back and you go, actually, I don't need to go that much farther to get it done. So before 75 hard, I was working out a little bit. I was reading some books. I
Mm-hmm.
already drank a ton of water, different things like that. But deciding that you are going to put yourself in the gym and work out mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and do that, and that
Mm-hmm.
is your top priority, changes literally how you do business. Because your body, first of all, and your mind doesn't understand the difference between business and personal. It
Mm-hmm.
it goes back and forth, and it's like there's no difference for it.
Yeah.
But with 75 hard, if you're not familiar with it, for those that are listening, you do two 45-minute workouts every day. One has to be outside. It's been
Yep.
105 to 107 these past couple of weeks where I live. So those have been brutal. It also requires to do 10 pages of reading, not an audiobook, and they need to be nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
Drink a gallon of water, no alcohol, no cheating, diet, et cetera, et cetera. So over the last 75 days, I have done that every single day without cheating. And when you add something like that, other things had to go off the list. So busyness had to go off the list.
Mm-hmm.
Dinners with people that I didn't really want to hang out with went off the list. Um,
I love it.
I mean,
It's
you
true.
tell people you're like, sorry, I'm not drinking alcohol and I'm eating this way. And they're like, okay, we'll catch you next time. And you're like,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Everything's awesome. So, over the last, 75 days, I have been focusing on my business, on my personal life for 2+ hours a day, which means that I've got 2 hours less to work in my business. And
Mm-hmm.
yet my business grew by over 65% by working less because my
Back to your
brain can't
clarity
tell.
and focus, right? Clarity and
Exactly,
focus.
clarity and focus. And my brain can't tell the difference between performance in business and performance in personal.
Mm-hmm.
So you strengthen your personal and you get rewards in your business.
What what encouraged you to do it?
Because I wanted to do something hard.
Yeah, I love it.
I had no real reasons. I just was
Yeah,
like, that sounds fun. I haven't been challenged in a while.
yeah.
Like, let's do it. The cool thing too is like, my husband and I do everything together. We've owned our own business together for over 10 years now.
Hmm.
And we do literally everything together. I don't promote spouse business partnerships
Yeah,
to most people,
right.
but for my husband and I, it works.
It works. You're one of the rare
And
ones. Yeah.
what's cool too is that my kids got on board.
Mm,
Just like when you start doing something in your business and you start telling people, okay, we're going to track these numbers, we're going to write this down, and you don't do it, your employees won't do it. But if you
yeah,
start doing it and show them what you're doing, they'll get on board. My kids are like,
that's so
did you
true.
drink all your water, mom? Have you gotten your second workout in? They started walking with us. We did a family walk every single evening for 45 minutes for the last 75 days. And I do a weighted vest so that way it's a little bit more of a workout and I'm chasing
Yep.
them and helping them. But my kids learned to ride a two-wheeler, two of them. And it's because they just got used to it. This is what we do. There's no option to not do it. And they still, like last night, they're like, did you log, mom? You're almost done. And when you have your kids or employees
Yeah.
encouraging you along, you know you're in the right place and you can go much farther than if you just try to like muscle through it on yourself.
You touch on something so great there, explaining things with your kids, and you touched on the business that a lot of times we will say something's important. There's this new process, this new system, whatever. As business owners, we say it once and then we never open our mouth about it again. And one just stupid example is, I have a painting company here in Colorado Springs, and we every single day my team gets a text from me, um, or they hear it from me verbally on site, but every day. Basically, I say, waste plastic. We're not in the apologies business. Cover and protect. I will always pay more money for cover and protection because it sends a message and it prevents a lot of problems in the future. Just one example of, as the leader, how you go, they go, right? And we've had zero problems with cover and protection because I've made that a very important thing. And I think that's where I've gone wrong in the past is, and take something as simple as, um, we need to have a weekly operations meeting in our company. Well, the first time that you go, well, we're really busy and guys are all scattered and stuff, so we'll skip it this week, right? You just sent a message that this thing you said was important 3 weeks ago was not important, right? And now you allow them off the hook.
This goes back to, again, the first thing I do before even implementing sales is cutting stuff off. So
Mm-hmm.
if you think about two graphs and, two bar graphs, one is what you actually do and the other one is what you intend to do. It typically looks like this. The
Mm-hmm.
intention side is huge. If you look at your to-do list and you get half of it done, you intended to do all these things, or your client has the expectation that you're going to do an amazing job and you leave trash on the ground, or you have whatever it is that you want, and then it's like what you actually do. And
Mm-hmm.
so when it's not aligned, what happens is we keep adding more things and all of a sudden our intention thing graph goes through the roof, and yet we're still stuck right here at what we actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the hardest thing for business owners to do is to narrow it down and only decide to do one thing. What
Mm-hmm.
is one thing we're measuring? What is one thing we're implementing? What is one thing we're fixing? What is that one thing? And then once you do this, you actually have the energy to expand. And I noticed this with 75 hard. I had to cut so much out, and I was like, I got to get this list done.
Mm-hmm.
Check the boxes, get 75 hard done, period. That was the goal every single day. There was nothing else on there. It was
Mm-hmm.
do this. And as I did that consistently, all of a sudden I had more time. And it's the weirdest
It
phenomenon,
is.
and you won't experience it until you actually do it. But when you cut it down and be like, I'm doing one thing today, I'm doing one meeting, I'm drinking 1 gallon of water, even just starting with something small like that, and you trick your brain to saying, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. Say I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do something and I do it. When you have those aligned, now you're going to go, I'm going to do 2 million in my business this year, your brain goes, well, duh, we have to do that because we've already trained our brain to do what we say we're going to do. And then you can go up and you can grow your business or change your personal life or do whatever it is that you want to do. But if we
Mm-hmm.
just keep on adding our intention and our expectations and, all this stuff, it's like we're still stuck back here versus lowering what we intend to do, making those align, locking them together, and then growing it together.
Mm. You mentioned the checking the boxes on 75 hard. It's funny how powerful that is because you have these tasks, and for me. I'm on my third year of the Live Hard program, and it's funny. Like I literally am like, I don't want to let down the app. Like I don't. I need to do my job. Like for me, it was so like I was so legalistic about it, if you want to put it in a weird way, right? Like I'm like, no, I don't, come hell or high water, I am checking these boxes today. And it is amazing that you do realize how much, for me, the first time I went around it, I realized how much time I waste. Like that was like a massive awakening for me. Was like I thought I was efficient. I thought I was disciplined. And
Same here.
yeah.
Same here. But here's the other thing too, is that we create a rhythm in our business.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a rhythm we've done intentionally, whether it's a rhythm that's working for us, whether it's a rhythm that's causing all sorts of problems, there is some type of rhythm in business.
Yeah.
And when you have to disrupt that rhythm in order to change it. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, like I like a glass of wine.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I used to be a master brewer, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I used to make beer for a living. So for me, like having a beer at night or having a glass of wine at night and debriefing with my husband, and he's had meetings and I've had meetings and our kids are a part of that conversation, has been the rhythm that our family was in. And on 75 hard, there's no alcohol and we
Mm-hmm.
have to somehow fit in an outdoor workout. And so we shifted that to 45-minute walks.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're walking, our endorphins are firing like crazy.
Yeah.
And we're doing the catch up, the debrief, the brainstorming, the strategy, everything on our walks. And, I've been asked so many times in the last week, are you going to stop? And I said, well, I'm going to do 75 medium because I'm not going to work out on Sunday anymore. I'm going to take a day of rest. But our 45-minute evening family walks are now part of our rhythm and they're not stopping.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
It's what we become. And so when your business becomes a systems culture and your business becomes one that's organized with clarity, it's easy to implement systems. It's easy to make a new SOP. It's easy to put in what you need to put in to make your business make more money
Mm-hmm.
versus if you are trying to fit your new systems into your old rhythm, it makes a lot of extra work and even more chaos.
Mm. That's gold. That is gold. So I got two more questions. One's a slam dunk because it's, how do we reach you? But before that, before we wrap up, I wanted to just ask you if there's one thing somebody could go implement today to improve their systems, short of contacting you. What would that be? What would you challenge them to do if they're listening?
I would challenge them to look through their business and see where is that first kink that's causing my problems. We always try to avoid something, and usually
Mm-hmm.
that's the first kink. If you've had something on your to-do list, whether it's a mental list or a scrap piece of paper on the desk, and you're avoiding something, that's usually the first kink. And what we like to do is we like to stay busy and we like to fix all the kinks in the middle of the hose
Mm-hmm.
between that kink that we actually need to fix. And so really thinking, what am I not doing that should be done? And on the flip side, what am I doing that I need to stop?
Yeah.
And so when you think about it that way, you don't need another system. You don't need an SOP. You don't need a new software program. You probably need to do that one thing on your to-do list, intend to do it, have the action that matches that intention and do it, and you'll have the energy and the clarity to take the next step. You always have enough resources. You always have enough ability right now to take a next step. Maybe it's a baby step, but it's the next
Mm-hmm.
step. And then you can go and take the next step. And
Yeah.
eventually you're going to take enough small steps that you're able to take those big steps and attend the conference and hire a coach and
Mm-hmm.
have more time to read a book. But until you match your intention with your behavior and take that tiny baby step to fix that kink or that thing that you're ignoring, or that one coach I had called it tolerances. What are you tolerating that is a problem, and you're like, I'm just going to ignore it and hope it goes away? That's probably the first place you need to start looking to think and create clarity around it so you can move your business forward.
I'm chuckling as you're sharing the hose story a minute ago, because that literally, I said it again. I hate the word literally. Anyway, the other day I was watering our plants in the backyard, and the hose was like way down there, and I'm down and like there's no water pressure, and I'm looking and I'm like, oh, it's kinked here, and I unkinked it, and the water pressure was still crappy. And then I'm like moving the hose, and I'm like, what the heck? And I walked up by the house, and right where it plugs into the house, it was kinked because we had like this big plant sitting there, and the way that the hose was pulled and hit the plant pot, it kinked the hose. So I'm laughing because that actually happened to me the other day.
And it took the most effort too, because you had to
Yeah.
walk all the way to the source to get it unkinked.
Yeah. Yeah. And so but I couldn't see it from where I was. I had to like walk back around the house, and I'm like, there's got to be another kink in it. And it was right there, right when it came out of the house. So that's why I was chuckling a little when you were telling the hose story, because I was like, hey, I did that. So Liz, where do people find you? How do they get in touch? I know there's thousands of fighters that listen to this show every week, and I guarantee 95% of them have some systems issues, process issues. They need your help. Where do you want them to go?
So I'm on Facebook and Instagram and a little bit on LinkedIn. I'm working on that system. That was one that had to drop during 75 hard.
Yeah.
So I'm on Liz Chisholm, and then you can go to lizchisholm.com and you can find everything there too.
Awesome. We'll make sure we drop those in the show notes. And for those coming to Mile High that have their VIP tickets, Liz is doing one of the workshops we have on the VIP day, which is going to be phenomenal. I have no doubt, and give you guys some clarity. So Liz, I appreciate you hanging with us today, and you're an absolute rock star. Keep doing your thing. And guys, go check out her links. Give her a follow, and be prepared for a massive retargeting campaign that's going to hit you all over social media. That's a good thing, by the way. That's a system. It's a process. Stay on the radar, right? So,
and it's easy to set up too.
It is. I love it. So awesome. Well, appreciate you being here. Look forward to seeing you in about 58 days. I think we have something like that. 58 days to Mile High. Guys, if you don't have your ticket, head to milehighprofitsummit.com. And with that, we will see you guys next time.